please give a warm welcome to Emily Garfield.
Thank you. There we go. Yay! Let me test this out. Yeah, just wanted to get the finger feel for it. So, yeah, my name is Emily Garfield, and I make maps of places that I make up as I draw. So it's been described as something like my brain drawing itself. I start somewhere and I just kind of go. Looks kind of like this, the process. That. So yeah, I go in a particular direction, and that direction is informed by my subconscious, by my previous experience, and by a sort of conscious aesthetic evaluation that happens in the moment. And I've described it as growing the drawing. And there's a reason that that word is associated with things like trees and cells and communities. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit once we watch this other little animation, which is fun. Animations are too long. So yeah, those three things have a property of emergence. And emergence means that they grow not top down by something deciding what they're going to look like and telling them what to do, but bottom up. So the small components in a cell or a tree or a community, which we'll get to, they kind of self-organize. They go by different small rules that have to do with the elements that they're next to. And so we see a lot of this in biology. We see fish schooling, or systems like ants foraging for food. And we also see it in how things grow from cells. So if you think about a tree, an acorn doesn't have the whole goal. It doesn't have a tree in it, but it has rules. So as things grow, cells respond to the things that are happening next to them, and they grow accordingly. And I'd like to say that in the same way, on a macro level, cities grow in this way. So if you think of people as the small elements, people self-organize based on rules. So some of the rules that they follow are things like they want to move somewhere that has resources. They want to move somewhere that has people that they know. So you see this in ethnic neighborhoods. You see people moving to a place where they know other people, and restaurants, things, amenities like that, kind of growing up in that area to serve that community. And likewise, there's a pretty timely and local system that happens over and over, cycle that happens in different places that's kind of happening here now, where you have an area that was affordable and creatives and artists moved there. And then bars and restaurants grew up to support the creatives and the artists, and now more people want to move there, and now developers are starting to look at it, and now the rents are too high and the artists move somewhere else. So that's something that happens in various places. It's a cycle, and it's kind of bottom up in that way. And it affects the geography of the area. It affects the map. How something is developed affects the way that it looks. And so that's why maps have kind of a bottom-up look to them as well. And so I describe my drawings likewise not as just happening top-down, which is what we just described. That would look like me planning out the drawing ahead of time and deciding what it's going to look like and making the materials fit to that. Instead, I draw it bottom-up. So I decide on some simple rules, and I work with those rules. So I don't know what the outcome is going to be likewise, but I know the rules. And those rules I determine from things like working with the material. So I've worked a lot with pen and watercolor and ink, and I know the kinds of things that those can do. So I started out drawing these maps around ink that I would splatter and run and let it do its thing, and that sort of starting point would let me create these small rules that I would grow this city from. Lately, I've been doing it in a more abstract way with splattering ink on the paper and drawing around that, or dripping ink on the paper and spraying water on it, which creates this cool pattern. That piece is actually on that back wall, so you can look at it in person. But yeah, these kinds of processes are really interesting to me because they allow me to explore the patterns of nature and physics and what those look like. They also allow me to outsource my decision making to these random kind of processes. And so as I've been thinking about that, and as it's been useful to me, I've started thinking so much more about the difference between natural or randomness in the physical world and randomness in the digital world. And so, for instance, in the physical world, that'll be something like this, where I drip ink on the paper and draw around that. But if you ask a computer to give you something random, it'll look kind of like this. So it's a bit different, and I'm really interested in the difference between those. So I even have projects in mind that I want to, make machines that will drip ink for me, either by a random process or computer random process, or maybe even a process that is random based on data sets from nature. And so I am always coming up with all these kinds of ideas and all these different ways to push what I do and use my inspirations to grow my process. And the thing with those kinds of ideas is that they don't always work. They're not always successful. But it's actually the very process of exploring those ideas that allows you to create more ideas. This is how creativity works. I mean, as you try out more things, you get kind of more fodder. You marinate in these ideas that you've come up with, and eventually there will be a connection that will be really successful. But you need to explore those things. You need to do that research so that you have that fodder, so that you have that creative resource. So, thank you.